My girlfriend joked, "My work husband is buying me lunch every day. You need to step up." I replied, "You're right." Then I sent her work husband a thank you card with a $30 Starbucks gift card for taking care of her. Her next call came from her panicked HR department. "I'm Noah Fletcher, 34, and I work as a senior financial analyst at a regional bank here in Phoenix. My job revolves around assessing financial risk, analyzing data patterns, and predicting outcomes based on behavioral indicators. It's a skill set that served me well professionally. I just wish I'd applied those same analytical principles to my personal life sooner." Isabel Sinclair and I had been together for 4 years, living together in my 3-bedroom townhouse in North Phoenix for the past 18 months. We'd been talking about engagement seriously, looking at rings, discussing a summer 2025 wedding. The first 3 years were solid. Weekend hiking in Sedona, date nights in Old Town Scottsdale, the usual progression of a mature relationship between two working professionals in their 30s. Then, 8 months ago, Isabel landed a promotion to senior marketing specialist at Apex Pharmaceuticals, one of those mid-tier companies with offices scattered across the valley. I was genuinely proud of her. The salary bump meant she could finally contribute equally to our shared expenses. The corner office with valley views was a nice touch. The whole package represented the kind of career advancement we'd both been working toward. But the new role brought changes I hadn't anticipated. Subtle shifts in her behavior that my risk assessment training should have flagged earlier. It started with a name that began appearing in every conversation: Howard Pierce. Howard was her new boss, the VP of marketing for the entire Southwest Division. Suddenly, every dinner conversation included Howard references. "Howard thinks my campaign proposal is revolutionary." "Howard took the team to lunch at the Phoenician." "Howard says my presentation skills are the best he's seen in his 15 years with the company." I'm not typically the jealous type. I understand workplace dynamics, the importance of building relationships with supervisors, the value of mentorship, but the frequency was overwhelming. This wasn't normal professional admiration or strategic networking. This felt like validation-seeking behavior from someone who'd never needed external validation before. Isabel had always been confident, self-assured, focused on her own metrics of success. Watching her light up when recounting Howard's praise felt different, almost desperate in a way that made my analytical instincts start firing warning signals. Then about 2 months ago, the work husband references began creeping into our conversations. "My work husband Howard brought me coffee again this morning," she'd laugh, scrolling through her phone over breakfast at our kitchen island. Initially, I found it mildly amusing. Office, dynamics, team building, whatever. Corporate culture has its own language, and pharmaceutical marketing probably had its own particular brand of workplace humor, but it escalated quickly, becoming more frequent and more intimate in its implications. Howard and I are so synchronized on this project. We literally finish each other's thoughts during meetings. It's like we've been working together for years instead of months. The way she said it, with that particular smile, the one usually reserved for private moments between us, made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't quite articulate at the time. I tried addressing it directly one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Babe, the work husband thing seems a little inappropriate, considering he's your direct supervisor." She rolled her eyes with practiced dismissal, the kind of expression that suggested I was being unreasonable about something obvious. "Oh, please, Noah, don't be one of those insecure guys. It's just office humor. This is how networking works in pharmaceutical marketing. You wouldn't understand. Your bank is so formal and stuffy." The dismissal stung more than I expected. My stuffy bank job was what qualified me for the mortgage on our townhouse, what made it possible for us to live in North Phoenix instead of some apartment complex in Glendale. But I let it slide, filing it away with the other small irritations that had been accumulating. The late-night text sessions started around the same time. Isabel would be on her phone constantly during our evening routines, typing rapid responses with the kind of focused attention she used to reserve for urgent client communications. When I'd ask about it, she'd wave dismissively. "Just Howard bouncing ideas around. He's a night owl, likes to brainstorm after hours." I wanted to point out that brainstorming with your boss at 10 p.m. seemed to blur professional boundaries, but I held back. I was already being labeled as insecure and controlling. Pushing further would only validate her characterization. Last Tuesday evening marked the inflection point, though I didn't recognize it at the time. We were having dinner at Zinc Bistro in Kierland Commons, a place I'd chosen and was paying for, as had become our standard arrangement since her promotion. Despite the salary increase, Isabel had developed expensive tastes that seemed to consume most of her additional income. She spent most of the meal responding to text messages, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her phone screen, occasionally smiling at whatever she was reading. The smile was soft, private, the kind of expression that suggested shared secrets. "Good day at the office?" I asked, trying to reclaim her attention. "Incredible," she replied, not looking up from her screen. "Howard approved my Q2 budget proposal, and he bought me lunch again. That's the 4th time this week. He's seriously the best manager I've ever had. So supportive, so generous with his time." She finally set her phone down, looked directly at me across our table, and delivered what would become the catalyst for everything that followed. "Honestly, my work husband is buying me lunch every day. You really need to step up." She laughed like she'd delivered the most brilliant punchline in comedic history, completely oblivious to how the words landed on my side of the table. I just stared at her, my salmon growing cold on my plate. All those micro-signals I'd been cataloging over the past few months, the dismissive comments about my concerns, the late-night team texts, the constant Howard references, the way she'd started deflecting conversations about our future wedding plans, suddenly formed a clear pattern. My profession is risk assessment, and the risk I was evaluating right now was that my girlfriend was, at minimum, emotionally cheating with her married 40-something boss. At worst, I was the clueless financial sponsor of her lifestyle while she auditioned for an upgrade. And she wasn't just doing it, she was mocking me for it, treating my concerns as character flaws rather than legitimate relationship boundaries. A strange calm descended over me as I processed this realization. The hurt was there, sharp and immediate, but it was quickly buried under layers of analytical clarity. This was a problem to be solved, not an emotion to be managed. I smiled back at her, a small, controlled expression that didn't reach my eyes. "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice steady and measured. "That's incredibly generous of him. I should definitely thank him for taking such good care of you." Isabel's smirk flickered for just a moment, uncertainty creeping into her expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's nice to know someone's looking out for you at the office. You're right, I should step up and show some appreciation for his generosity." The remainder of dinner proceeded in relative quiet. She returned to her phone, presumably continuing her evening text session with Howard. I ate my salmon methodically, my mind already shifting into analytical mode, processing the situation like any other risk assessment I'd handle at work. The drive home was silent except for the soft ping of her phone receiving messages. I focused on the road, on the familiar route through North Phoenix, while mentally cataloging everything I knew about workplace relationships and corporate policies. That night, as Isabel took her usual extended shower, another recent habit that conveniently coincided with what I suspected were longer phone conversations, I sat in my home office and began planning my response. The next morning, while Isabel was at her early yoga class, I conducted my research with the same methodical approach I'd use for any financial analysis. 10 minutes on LinkedIn gave me Howard's full professional profile. Howard Pierce, VP of Marketing, Southwest Division, Apex Pharmaceuticals. 15 years with the company, MBA from Arizona. State, member of several pharmaceutical industry associations. A quick Google search revealed his personal social media presence, minimal but revealing. His wife's Facebook page was more open. Photos of their 2 teenage daughters at Lake Pleasant, family vacation shots from Flagstaff, pictures of their house in Paradise Valley with its distinctive desert landscaping, a lovely family that had no idea their husband and father was violating corporate ethics policies. Then, I found what I was really looking for. Apex Pharmaceuticals, as a publicly traded company, was required to maintain transparent corporate governance policies. Their investor relations website had a comprehensive section on compliance and ethics. I downloaded their 95-page employee handbook and code of conduct, then navigated directly to Section 4, Personal Relationships and Conflicts of Interest. The language was unambiguous and comprehensive. Any romantic or personal relationship between a supervisor and direct subordinate constituted a critical conflict of interest and was strictly prohibited throughout the organization. The policy specifically stated that even the appearance of such relationships could trigger immediate investigation and disciplinary action, up to and including termination for both parties involved. More relevant to my situation, the document explicitly mentioned that supervisors providing excessive personal gifts, benefits, or preferential treatment to subordinates was grounds for immediate disciplinary action. The policy defined excessive as anything beyond standard company-provided amenities or occasional team-building activities. Daily lunch purchases certainly qualified as excessive personal benefits. They had constructed their own trap, built the framework for their own consequences. All I needed to do was illuminate the situation for the appropriate decision makers. I went online and ordered a standard corporate thank you card from Office Depot. Nothing fancy, just professional and appropriately bland. Then I ordered a $30 Starbucks gift card with next-day delivery. The amount was significant enough to demonstrate genuine appreciation, but not so large as to seem inappropriate from my end. When the materials arrived the following afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table and composed my message in my clearest, most sincere handwriting. Dear Howard, I wanted to send a brief thank you for all the support you've been providing my girlfriend, Isabel Sinclair. She mentions you frequently, particularly how you've been generous enough to purchase her lunch nearly every day this week. In our busy professional lives, it's wonderful to know she has such a supportive and generous supervisor looking out for her well-being. Thank you for taking such excellent care of her. Best regards, Noah Fletcher, Isabel's boyfriend. I read it 3 times, analyzing each sentence for tone and implication. The language was earnest and appreciative, exactly what any reasonable person would write to thank their partner's generous boss. There was no sarcasm, no hidden meaning, no obvious malice, just genuine gratitude from a boyfriend to a supervisor. I inserted the gift card, addressed the envelope to Mr. Howard Pierce, VP of Marketing, Apex Pharmaceuticals, and included the full corporate address I'd found on their website. I mailed it on Wednesday afternoon from the post office near my bank, paying for delivery confirmation. The die was cast. The rest of the week proceeded with an odd sense of normalcy. I maintained my usual routine, work, gym, evening news, while remaining polite but emotionally distant with Isabel. She didn't notice the change in my demeanor. She was too absorbed in her phone managing whatever was happening with Howard. I found myself observing her behavior with the detached curiosity of a researcher studying an interesting specimen, the way she'd light up when her phone buzzed during dinner, how she'd angle the screen away from me when typing responses, the little smile she'd get when reading certain messages. Thursday evening, she was particularly animated, bouncing around our kitchen while preparing her protein smoothie. Howard loved my presentation today. He said it was exactly the kind of innovative thinking Apex needs to stay competitive. He's recommending me for the senior campaign manager position that's opening up next quarter. I nodded appropriately, made encouraging sounds, asked follow-up questions about the promotion and the timeline. But internally, I was calculating timelines, wondering if my card had reached its destination yet, imagining the moment when Howard would open an envelope addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Friday morning arrived with typical Arizona sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. Isabel left early for what she called a strategic planning breakfast with her team. I went to work as usual, settling into my cubicle with my coffee and opening my morning risk assessment reports. The morning passed without incident until 1:45 p.m., when I was deep in quarterly risk analysis spreadsheets, comparing default probability models across different loan portfolios. My phone buzzed against my desk, a missed call from Isabel. Then another buzz and another. Text messages began flooding in. Call me immediately. What did you do? Noah, I'm not kidding. What did you do? Howard is in an emergency meeting with HR. They called me in next. They have your card. Call me now. I read each message with the same dispassionate interest I'd apply to reviewing loan application data. The timeline was exactly what I'd predicted. Corporate mail delivery, executive assistant processing, HR escalation protocols. It had all proceeded according to standard corporate procedures. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on my desk. After a few minutes, I replied, "An important client meeting. Can't talk. What's happening?" The response was immediate. Emergency HR. Investigation. Your thank you card triggered compliance review. They think Howard and I are having inappropriate relationship. I'm suspended pending investigation. I set my phone aside and returned to my spreadsheets. The risk models demanded attention, and I had genuine work responsibilities to fulfill. Whatever was happening at Apex Pharmaceuticals would resolve itself according to their established policies and procedures. I completed my workday methodically, finishing my quarterly analysis and submitting my recommendations to senior management. I drove home slowly through Phoenix traffic, listening to a podcast about Federal Reserve monetary policy. The familiar drive through North Phoenix felt different somehow, more peaceful, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted. When I arrived at my townhouse, Isabel's white SUV, the one I'd co-signed the lease for 18 months earlier when her credit score was still recovering from some poor financial decisions in her 20s, was parked crookedly in our driveway, blocking half of my usual spot. I walked inside to find her standing in our living room wearing her full corporate attire, navy blazer, crisp white blouse, pencil skirt, the armor of a pharmaceutical marketing professional, but her face was pale and streaked with tears, her usual composure completely shattered. "Noah!" she practically shrieked the moment she saw me. "What did you do?" "Hi, babe," I said calmly, hanging my jacket in the hall closet. "Rough day at the office?" "Don't rough day me. I was called into an emergency meeting with HR, our department head, Howard, 2 company attorneys on video conference from corporate headquarters, and our regional compliance officer." "Oh no, that sounds serious. What was it about?" "They had a card, Noah. A thank you card from you with a gift card inside it. Why would you send that? Why would you write those things down?" I feigned confusion, tilting my head slightly. "I did exactly what I said I would do. I thanked him for being so generous. You said he buys you lunch every day. I was being polite, showing appreciation, stepping up like you suggested." "You idiot!" she screamed, her professional composure finally cracking completely. "You don't do that. You don't send evidence. You don't document things. He's my supervisor. It's against company policy. They think there's something inappropriate happening between us." Her voice cracked on the last words, and I could see the moment when she realized the full implications of what had transpired. I looked at her calmly, my voice remaining level and measured. I didn't raise my voice or show anger. "Is there something inappropriate happening, Isabel?" She froze completely, the blood draining from her face. The question hung in the air between us like a challenge she couldn't meet. She finally understood. This wasn't a blunder or miscommunication. It was a mirror reflecting her own behavior back at her, with perfect clarity. "What? What are you talking about? Is there something inappropriate happening between you and Howard? Because you've been networking with him for months. You've been accepting daily gifts from him. You've been flaunting your work husband in my face and then mocking me for not measuring up to his generosity. You seem proud of the special relationship you'd built." I paused, letting the words settle. "I simply agreed with your assessment and sent a polite, professional thank you note, boyfriend to supervisor, expressing gratitude for his generosity toward my girlfriend. What's the problem with that? Unless, of course, that generosity was something you both should have been hiding from HR and compliance." "You," she sputtered, her mind racing to find some angle, some way to spin this situation back in her favor. "You did this deliberately. You're trying to destroy my career. You're sabotaging me because you can't handle my success." "No, Isabel, you did this. You and Howard violated company policy. You disrespected our 4-year relationship, our engagement plans, everything we built together. I simply turned on the lights. I'm just a guy who sent a thank you card to express appreciation. What happens next is the direct consequence of your choices and his." She stared at me, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally something approaching panic as the full scope of her situation became clear. "Noah, please," she tried, her voice shifting to pleading. "You have to fix this. You have to call them. Call HR and tell them. Tell them you're just a clueless, overeager boyfriend who doesn't understand office dynamics. Tell them you misunderstood everything. Please, Noah, they've suspended me pending a full investigation." "Suspended?" I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by how quickly Apex had moved. Wow, they're taking a $30 Starbucks card very seriously. Must be a very strict policy about supervisor-subordinate relationships. "Noah, please. My career, everything I've worked for." "No," I said quietly but with finality. I will not lie to a corporation's HR department and legal team for you. This investigation is between you, Howard, and Apex Pharmaceuticals. I have nothing to do with their internal policies or how they choose to enforce them. I walked to the hall closet and retrieved her large rolling suitcase, the expensive one she'd bought for our planned trip to Europe next spring. I set the suitcase on our living room couch with deliberate care. And since you're suspended, you'll have plenty of time to pack. I want you out tonight. What? You can't kick me out, Noah. I have nowhere to go. This is my home, too. You can stay with your work husband, I said evenly. Oh wait, he's probably busy explaining this situation to his actual wife right now. His wife and those 2 teenage daughters I saw in the Facebook photos. I guess you'll need to call Melody. That's when she erupted into a full screaming, crying breakdown. She called me every name imaginable: monster, sociopath, saboteur, controlling freak. The words bounced off me like rain on glass. I'd already processed the emotional impact of this relationship ending. Now I was just managing logistics. I'm going to get dinner, I said calmly. You have 1 hour to pack your immediate necessities. You can arrange to collect the rest of your belongings later. If you're not gone when I return, I'm calling Phoenix PD to have you escorted from my property. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away, leaving her screaming in my living room. I didn't look back. I drove to a local sports bar, ordered a burger and beer, and watched the Suns game on the overhead television. The normalcy felt surreal after the confrontation, but also peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't analyzing Isabel's behavior, wasn't wondering about her motivations, wasn't walking on eggshells around her increasingly erratic moods. When I returned home exactly 1 hour later, she was gone. Her car was no longer in the driveway, and the house felt different, lighter somehow. She'd left a nasty note on the kitchen counter, which I immediately threw away without reading completely. The first line had been enough. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. The following morning, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed on my townhouse. Then I began documenting everything methodically, screenshots of her text messages from that afternoon, a copy of Apex Pharmaceuticals' Code of Conduct downloaded from their website, my receipt for the thank you card and gift card, even the delivery confirmation from the post office. I sent it all to my friend Owen Crawford, who works as a contract attorney here in Phoenix specializing in employment law. We'd gone to Arizona State together, and he'd helped me with various legal questions over the years. Owen called me back within an hour, and I could hear him laughing. This is beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. Plausible deniability all the way down. You're a concerned boyfriend expressing gratitude to his girlfriend's generous boss. She's the one who violated company policy. The peace and quiet lasted approximately 48 hours before what I came to think of as the entitlement campaign began in earnest. Monday evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Is this Noah Fletcher? The voice was deep and authoritative, with that particular tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately. Yes, this is Noah. This is Richard Sinclair, Isabel's father. Son, I think we need to have a serious conversation. You've made a terrible mistake. You've jeopardized my daughter's career over petty jealousy. Richard Sinclair owned a successful law firm in Tucson, specializing in real estate and business law. I'd met him several times during family gatherings, and he'd always struck me as someone who solved problems through intimidation and financial pressure. Mr. Sinclair, I said, maintaining a level tone, I sent a thank you card to express appreciation, that's all. Don't play games with me, Fletcher, he barked. Isabel told me everything. You're a controlling, neurotic boyfriend, and you're going to fix this situation immediately. You're going to call her HR department, which I know personally through business connections, and explain that you're emotionally unstable, that you misunderstood harmless office dynamics, and that you apologize for wasting their time. You will clear my daughter's name. The sheer audacity was staggering. He wanted me to lie to a corporation's HR department and destroy my own reputation to save his daughter from the consequences of her own actions. Mr. Sinclair, with all due respect, no. I will not lie to a corporation's HR and legal departments to cover for your daughter's policy violations. If a simple thank you card can detonate her entire career, then the problem isn't the card. The problem is what she was doing to earn such scrutiny. I hung up before he could respond. He called back twice that evening. I didn't answer. The next day brought a new front in their campaign. Text messages from Melody Parker began flooding my phone. Noah, you are an absolute monster. Isabel is destroyed. She hasn't stopped crying since Friday. She's having a complete breakdown, all because your fragile ego couldn't handle her success. She's a rising star, and you're just some boring bank analyst who couldn't stand being with someone more successful. Now she's going to lose her car. Payment is due in 3 days, and she can't afford it because you got her suspended. She's going to be homeless and carless. I hope you're satisfied with yourself. That last message hit me like ice water. Her car. The white SUV parked in my driveway. The one I'd co-signed the lease for when we moved in together because her credit score was poor from some financial mistakes in her 20s. I was the primary signer on the lease. If she missed payments, it would devastate my credit rating. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about financial self-preservation. I called Owen immediately. I'm an idiot. I co-signed her car lease last year. He sighed deeply. Okay, that's problematic, Noah, but manageable. You're legally responsible for the payments, but you can't let her maintain possession of an asset you're financially liable for, especially when she's unemployed and clearly hostile toward you. Within an hour, I was on the phone with the leasing company, explaining the situation calmly and professionally. I was the primary leaseholder. The co-signer had been suspended from her employment and had vacated my residence, and I was no longer comfortable with her possessing the vehicle due to high risk of default and potential damage. The finance representative was surprisingly helpful and understanding. Since I was the primary signer and payments were genuinely at risk, I had several legal options available. We arranged voluntary repossession. I was volunteering her car, not mine. Less than an hour later, my phone exploded with calls from Isabel. I let them ring. 2 weeks later, the final verdict came through mutual friends. Howard was stripped of his VP title, demoted to compliance analyst, and lost all stock options. His wife filed for divorce, taking their Paradise Valley house. Isabel was terminated for gross misconduct, fired, not laid off, making her ineligible for unemployment benefits. The legal threats from Richard's firm evaporated after Owen's response letter. They knew they had nothing. 3 months later, Isabel moved back to Tucson to live with her parents, working an entry-level insurance job. Howard's living in a rental apartment, his pharmaceutical career effectively over. The car repossession hit my credit score, dropped at 85 points, but Owen says it's recoverable with proper documentation of the circumstances. I've been dating Maya Thompson, a landscape architect who designs hiking trails around Phoenix, for 2 months now. When I told her this story, she just said, "A work husband? Why would anyone want to be married to their job?" I don't feel like I won some epic revenge. I feel like I survived a parasite. They didn't face my revenge. They faced consequences. And I'm finally at peace.